Modern history is just packed with these incredible moments where people all together just say, enough. But what actually happens after that? Today, we're going to dig into the really complex story of revolutions and ask a tough question. Are they really a victory for the people, or is something else going on entirely?
It almost always kicks off with these same simple, powerful ideas. The first cry is always for freedom. And right behind that, a demand for justice. A call to finally put an end to all the corruption and the inequality. And then, of course, a plea for bread, that fundamental right to live with dignity. These are the sparks that light the fire of revolution. But here's the billion-dollar question, right? Once the old guard is gone, who steps in to fill that massive power vacuum? This is exactly where the story so often takes a really sharp and sometimes tragic turn. So let's get into our first section here, which really gets to the heart of the matter. That huge, gaping distance between what a revolution promises and what it actually delivers. And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. The people might be the ones to start the whole thing, but they very quickly find themselves becoming pawns on this giant global chessboard, playing a game where they didn't write the rules and frankly can't control the other players. Okay, section 2. Let's take a closer look at this game of global powers in action. We're going to walk through a few key examples that show a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. Let's start with Iran. Back in 1979, the people rose up against a dictator, and guess what? They won. But the second the Shah fell, this huge power vacuum opened up, and it was filled so fast by other organized forces, both inside and outside the country, that completely hijacked the revolution and set the nation on a totally different course. Or how about Egypt in 2011? We all watched it happen. Protesters filled Tahrir Square, the dictator was out, and it felt like this incredible moment of hope for the whole world. But that freedom, it was so short-lived. And why? Because even though the face at the top changed, the deep state, the underlying power structure, it didn't budge. You could say the revolution won the battle, but the system won the war. And then there's Libya, which is maybe the most heartbreaking example of all. The dictator Gaddafi was overthrown, but this time with direct military help from other countries. The goal was a fresh start. The result? A shattered state. Libya stopped being a unified country and basically became a battleground, where these external powers are still fighting over the pieces, carving up the nation's future to suit themselves. And seeing this pattern over and over again leads us to our third section, and a very blunt question. When all the dust settles from this chaos, who's actually benefiting from it? I mean, it's tragically obvious that the winners are usually not the people who are in the streets chanting for freedom. So if it's not them, who is it? Well, the answer seems to lie in a very deliberate strategy that's used by global powers. And this is where it gets really fascinating, because there's a kind of playbook. It has two main goals. Goal number 1 is straightforward: direct regime change. You get rid of the old government and install a new one that's friendly to your interests. But if you can't pull that off, there's a backup plan, and it's way more cynical. Just weaken the country. Make it chaotic, make it unstable, because a weak country can't challenge you, and it's a heck of a lot easier to get to its resources. So what does a weakened country even mean in this game? Well, it means a nation becomes controllable. It can't chart its own destiny anymore. It becomes sanctionable, it's easy to push around with economic threats, and maybe worst of all, it becomes tradable. Its resources, its ports, its entire future, they all become bargaining chips for the bigger players on that global chessboard. Look, this isn't some wild conspiracy theory. It's just a pattern of power politics. And just recognizing that this is how the game is played is a huge first step. Which brings us to our final section, the real revolution, which might just be a revolution of awareness. So here's the absolute heart of the matter. Passion and anger are enough to start a revolution, but they are never enough to finish it. Any movement that doesn't have a solid, unified political plan for what comes next is just vulnerable. And without that plan, without that vision, the revolution becomes an open door for other interests to just walk right in and steal the outcome. It gets confiscated. We're all told this really simple story, right? Oppression happens, then revolution, then freedom. But maybe, just maybe, that's one of the biggest and most dangerous lies in history. The road from chains to liberty is almost never a straight line. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from all this. Freedom isn't some trophy you win one day and then put on a shelf. It's something that has to be protected, constantly, through awareness. Awareness of how the global game is played, awareness of the playbook used to weaken nations, and the awareness that the day a dictator falls isn't the end of the fight. It's the beginning of a brand new one. So it leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. If popular revolutions are so easily hijacked, then maybe the real revolution, the one that truly matters, isn't the one in the streets for control of a building, but the one that has to happen in our minds first.